we can get Barbara.
Sure.
Good evening, everyone. Director Dye informed us today that under the just cause provision in the Brown Act to allow her to appear remotely. And under that provision, I'm getting feedback. Can you hear me okay?
Hold on a second. There's
There's some feedback.
There's
There's feedback.
think
There's
it's
feedback
Barbara.
coming from the laptop.
it's
No,
probably,
try it,
no, it's
Bill.
probably Barbara.
She just muted.
It's computers. Oh, she.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Okay. Anyway, she informed us today that pursuant to the just cause provision, which you may remember, director can use that 2 times in a year. By the way, the Brown Act has been amended, and so I think it's been extended to 4 times per year, but don't quite quote me that, starting January 1. In any event, she meets the condition based on my discussion with Ms. Atmore regarding being able to appear remotely. She just needs to state that anyone in the room with her who is 18 years or older and her relationship with them, and your board needs to vote. 2/3 of you need to vote to allow this item to be added to the agenda so that you could vote for her to appear remotely under the just cause provision. So I'm recommending that you first consider a vote to consider this and allow Director Dye to appear remotely.
Do we motion?
Do we need a motion?
Yes.
Okay. I move to allow Director Dye to appear remote.
Second. Was there a roll call for that? Director Allen?
Yes.
Director Bowles? Yes. Director Randall? Director Marsh?
Yes.
Okay.
And
Motion
with
passes.
that, Director Dye can now appear remotely.
Okay, I'll do a roll.
So we'll do a full roll call
Now I
now.
want her to.
Don't I have to say something? No?
Come on, camera ready.
I think she needs to confirm that there's no one over these,
Yes.
no one under the issue.
We need a 360 pan.
So you're muted.
So Barbara, you have to confirm that there's no one in the room over the age of 18.
And if there are, what their relationship to you is.
Okay, thank you. Yes, I had breast cancer surgery this morning, but I'm feeling well enough to be here. So there is no one in the room with me and will not be throughout this meeting. What happens if my husband walks in, Bill?
Don't tell us.
You said there's nobody in the room, Barbara. I think that's good enough for now. And I'm sure if he walks in and out, we're going to be okay. So.
Had a classified public meeting.
Right.
All right.
Okay, so roll call. Director Allen,
Present.
Director Bowles, Director Randall,
Yeah.
Director Marsh,
Here.
Director Dye,
Here.
and also in attendance is General Manager Chuck Duffy, Assistant General Manager Hope Atmore, and General Counsel Bill Parkin, who is participating remotely.
Okay, so we're going to start the meeting with general public participation. As per usual, public members may comment on matters under the jurisdiction of the district that are not on the agenda. Comments on limited to 3 minutes. We will time you. I don't have any slips here. Is there anyone in the room that would like to speak? Going forward, we have slips in the back, so when we want to speak in this part, if you can just fill it out so we can have it up here with and is also speaking to the board.
So, speaking on behalf of the NCC, I wanted to just give you guys an update. We are wrapping up our year. There's a few kind of open items. I think we are only going to have 2 additional meetings this year, one in November and one in December. So if there's any open items from GCSD that we're supposed to kind of pay attention to. At one point, I think there was a mention of a letter. I'm not sure if that is resolved or not. We do plan on having a special meeting to kind of do a deep dive and kind of look at the priority list and see what we haven't gotten to and what we're going to push over. And then we also have our year-end nomination and voting process that's going to be taking place. Beyond that, I think we'll have some interesting and exciting updates for the new year, just around processes and how we are engaging the community. Hopefully a new website and some more community interaction. So I think that's that.
Alright. Go ahead.
Good evening, members of the GCSD board and El Granada community. My name is May Clark and I'm the executive director of Wilkinson School. Tonight, I am speaking on behalf of the school, myself, our two board members, Marnie Weston and Isaac Miller, who are with me tonight. We'd like to thank you for giving us the opportunity to share a little bit about Wilkinson School and our vision for how we can continue to grow and serve the coastside community. Wilkinson School is an independent elementary and middle school that's been part of the Mid-Coast community for almost 50 years. We believe academic excellence is achieved when knowledge and character grow together, nurturing empathy, resilience, and critical thinking. We practice an inquiry and project-based approach to learning, where students are encouraged to ask questions, seek answers, make connections between what they learn and the world around them. We often say we're a school without walls because learning happens everywhere, on campus, in nature, and in the broader community. Over the years, Wilkinson has built partnerships that extend beyond the classroom. Our middle school and upper elementary students volunteer monthly at Coastside Hope, helping with their senior brown rag program. Our students also regularly participate in local beach cleanups and other efforts to preserve our beloved coast. And last year, we extended our aftercare program to serve families from El Granada School. As a nonprofit organization, we are dedicated to providing a Wilkinson education to families from all walks of life. We make this possible through a robust financial aid program. We are proud to provide a program that supports students, families, and the community at large. We see ourselves as an essential part of the Coast Side's educational system. As we look ahead, we have identified 2 key growth areas for our school and believe they would also have a positive community impact for the Mid-Coast. A dedicated space for middle school students and an early learning option for young children. We are thrilled to announce Wilkinson School is planning an expansion to meet both needs. We've entered into a lease partnership at 990 Avenue Alhambra, which will allow us to create a middle school annex, a space specifically designed for 6th through 8th graders. It will include small group classrooms, collaborative project areas, and space for applied science, cooking, and maker experiences. At the same time, we are planning to open a preschool and early learning center on our main campus. This program will serve children ages 2 to 5, offering a nurturing, play-based environment that reflects Wilkinson's values and teaching philosophy. We know there is a pressing need for early childhood programs on the Mid-Coast, and we are excited to be part of the solution in helping families find quality care. As we move forward, we're committed to being good neighbors and collaborative partners. Our goal is to enhance, not disrupt, the fabric of El Granada. We'll continue to engage families, local agencies, and community partners as we take each step. We are deeply grateful to the GCSD for your service to El Granada community. It is our hope that with the support of residents and GCSD together, we can ensure that El Granada continues to be a place where children grow, learn, and belong, from preschool all the way through middle school. We would love to schedule a follow-up conversation with you to share our plans in greater depth and explore ways in which GCSD and Wilkinson School can partner to support education on the Mid-Coast. Thank you for your time, your support, and your commitment to our community.
Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, May. Great news for El Granada.
Yes.
Any other comments in the room? All right, how about on Zoom? Anybody there? All right, seeing as there are none, we'll move into the regular meeting agenda. Recreation activities.
Okay. Just some updates there in the memo as well that we were really pleased with the past few events that we held. We've done a couple more sound bath workshops, and then we had a birding walk with Donna Pomeroy on October 11th. Director Dye helped with that as well. We ended up with 16 people at that event, and they saw a rare Lapland longspur, which apparently was a big deal. So that was really exciting for them. We had our Recology event as well. Our yoga classes are growing every week, so that's very exciting. We have a Half Moon Bay Library gem painting class next week. We're gonna have the nature journaling again at the end of October, and just ongoing with the yoga classes. So those are all happening. And then also there was a handout in front of all of you for the Harbor District Trunk Retreat that's happening on October 25th. They're really trying to get the word out. People decorate the trunks of their cars, and the kids come around and kind of trick or treat from the trunks of the cars. So that's all.
Great, thank you.
I've not heard of that before. Yeah, it's a new thing. Trunk or treat.
Trunk or treat. Any questions or comments from the board or? Oh. Anything from the community on this one? And on Zoom? Okay. Move on then to Granada Community Park and Recreation Center project. First we'll do the updates from the ad hoc committee.
It's my turn.
Your turn.
Okay, but one of the things, when we formed the ad hoc committee, one of our commitments was to go back and review questions from the community, ideas from the community. So last month, Director Randall reviewed hybrid preschool, unlicensed, and so on. And so we've done that report. My report tonight is on exploring the implications for sale, because there were suggestions that maybe we should just sell this. So I won't go through all the detail, but just a bit of background for those who aren't aware. The zoning for the Burnham Strip changed in about 2011 or 12. And from Coronado all the way to Deer Creek, this side of the road, it's El Granada gateway zoning, which has certain restrictions, no commercial or residential use. It leans toward, to the greatest degree possible, visual and open space characteristics. It allows, though, public serving amenities such as community center, interpretive center, library, parks and trails, art centers, recreation facilities, public parking. It's specific for Surfers Beach, and public restrooms and showers, and pedestrian and bike trails. So it's not necessarily all inclusive, but that gives a sense for what the zoning allows. Also, there are building restrictions. The buildings can't be higher than 16 feet. There are large setbacks, 50 feet from the front, 20 feet from the sides and rears. And probably the most restrictive is the maximum parcel coverage is 10%. So you can't have very much that's more than 18 inches tall in that zone. So GCSD, starting in 2022, has developed a plan for 6,000 square foot community recreation center on the site. For scale, because I know that's really hard, if you're familiar with the Ted Adcock Center, this is smaller. It's about 1,000 square feet smaller. So it's a very small rec center, although the National Parks and Rec Association recommends in a temperate climate like ours, 1 square foot for every per capita in the population. And we are about 6,000 people in the district and 6,000 square feet. So it seems to be right sized.
Nancy, when you talk about all of Ted Adcock, you're talking about the gymnasium and offices and.
No, just the community center that's in the Shoreline Station parking lot,
Right.
not the Boys and Girls Event Center. It's just a little building
Right, but it's 2 buildings kind of with a breezeway.
with the lobby on one side. Yes, it's that whole complex. They have 3 rooms, I think, but plus their staff.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's about 7,000 square feet. So it's pretty small. The GCSD plan would go a complete renovation of the existing structure up to current code. That's likely to be phase 1, which would give us 2 multi-purpose rooms, a small meeting room, and space for staff adjacent to the park. And then the addition of a new 3,000 square foot community multipurpose room, which would include a catering kitchen, mechanical and storage space, and more public restrooms, which is likely to be phase 2. I looked at the how we assess the market opportunity. If we were to say, maybe we won't do this and we'll put it up for sale. It's really hard to assess because it can't be used for a commercial purpose. And so the market is really entities like GCSD who would use it for a public purpose. The only viable commercial use is for a buyer to continue the preschool operation using the existing grandfathered preschool business use permit. This actually has been tried in 2021. The reason that the property was put on the market is because with the difficulties getting through the pandemic, the business owner of the preschool thought she was trying to sell it and thought she might have to close. The building owner, who was the founder of the preschool, really wanted to try to help the preschool continue, but she knew that if the existing business closed, it could never be a business again because of the current zoning. You couldn't get a business use permit for it. So she put the property on the market in the hopes that they'd attract a preschool business that would buy both the property and the preschool. They did actually attract first a developer who, when they found out about the zoning, pulled out, but 2 immersion preschool providers who did assess it, had at least got into negotiations on the property and with the preschool. For reasons that are not my business, neither one of those worked out. So there has been an effort to continue it as a preschool with a new immersion preschool provider, and those just weren't to go. As our board knows, last January, when the business owner and her attorney came asking for an extra year on lease, the purpose was to keep that business use permit live because they thought they might have somebody who would be interested in making an offer on the building. I checked back in with the business owner in early August. She said she, with the busy summer, hadn't heard from the person who was interested in a couple months, would check with them and get back to me, but I haven't heard anymore. So I'm not sure that that's really viable. It would basically be, I think, a parent buying it to keep the school going. So it doesn't seem like there really are prospects for a sale. But the other thing that we looked into, it's a little more complicated when you're a public agency, and this I needed to inform myself about. A public agency had just put it on the market like a private person. The public agency has to comply with the public agency obligation under the Surplus Land Act. And that means if GCSD decided to take formal action to declare the property is no longer needed for our uses, we would have to follow a process prescribed by the California Surplus Land Act, which is Government Code 54220. Just briefly, that involves notifying the California housing, it's HFA, I can't remember what those letters are. Housing sponsor list, notify their sponsor list and all the public entities within the district. So that includes any other special districts such as the Harbor District. We would have to provide that notification and allow 60 days from the date of that notification for any offers to come in specifically from those entities. If we did get an offer, we would be required to allow 90 days for negotiation. We would not be under an obligation to accept an offer, but we would need to take 90 days and allow for back and forth and to negotiate. So only if that was unsuccessful, then we could complete any negotiations with an interested private buyer. So it's a long, fairly involved process with a preference for housing. And I know it's not zoned for housing at this time, but we'd have to go through the process offering it to those on housing lists. Given this, the conclusion that we came to is given the limited buyer's market for this property, given the public use limitations of the El Granada Gateway District zoning and the desire of the community for neighborhood serving uses. I mean, we've done 3 surveys asking the community if they would like a community center And we got a positive response of about 70% in 2015, in 2019, and again in 2022. And so given that the ad hoc committee doesn't not recommend declaring the property as surplus property and offering it for sale, but proceeding as planned. And we're not done yet. We have another round of considerations before we come back with the final conclusions of the ad hoc committee. Any questions from the board?
I just want to clarify one point, and that is, earlier this year, we went through a negotiation with the tenant to extend the lease for another year, on the basis that she was in the process of trying to work with a potential buyer. And since then, we've heard absolutely nothing.
Right.
That's what she was saying earlier.
Yeah.
I just
Yeah,
want to
there's
clarify that.
There's not been follow-up to us from a buyer. And when I checked in with the business owner,
There was no,
yeah, she hasn't followed back up.
all right, thank you.
It's the end date for that 1-year extension.
May 31st.
Thanks for putting this together.
There,
Yeah.
any questions from the public? I'm sorry, Mr. Chair. So you were moving on.
As well.
No, I just was saying my board comment. Putting this together. Any questions from the public or comments from the public in the room?
Sorry.
Yes.
Yes.
We know who you
So just relinquishing myself from my affiliation with the NCC and speaking on behalf of co-site allies and myself as a community member. First, I want to commend Nancy for the report. It is very refreshing in the way that you guys, found able to infuse that part of the conversation into this process. I think it is one that has been missing from public context, from social media, from everything that we hear about this project. The fact that viable offers have come forth and things have not worked out for whatever circumstance. So I commend you for embracing that, and I strongly recommend that, whenever it is pertinent to bring that forward, because it helps to inform the community that GCSD is not remiss of, trying to do something, and my understanding is that you've done more than just that, because Debbie Picasso, in good faith brought those to her, but that GCSD also went and showed this individual viable spaces after that fact. So there's that. The other question that I had is, was important and just totally left my brain. The use of the space as it's outlined in the guidance that you were referring to. My understanding is that guidance was created by the county years prior to GCSD announcing that it was going to develop this community center. Therefore, the very first paragraph of the list of things that are viable options to be used for in that space should really shift. Co-site Allies has requested that we start a petition to the county to have them readdress that, because the idea of keeping the majority of that space open and green space is now something that should be revisited as it would exist with the GCSD Community Center, Recreation and Community Center in the place there. Also, there was a for sale sign there. Was that a private land owner who's just like, okay, it's time to get rid of this property?
There's 3 small parcels between the 2 Harbor District parcels. I happened to be walking my dogs when he was putting the sign up. And so they're, I think, hoping that since they're between the 2 Harbor District parcels, maybe they'll find a buyer in the Harbor District.
So Co-site Allies is going to start 2 petitions, one to support the pre-app with planning, and then this additional one for the county to revisit the language that exists on that document that actually specifies surfers beach overflow parking as part of it, in response to the Harbor District. So I will reach out directly to Hope and ask for some assistance with that. Thank you.
Sorry, I don't quite understand what you're advocating for on the ally side. Can you just explain a little more? You're saying you're wanting to make this more expansive? Or you're wanting to use this language to help inform what they're doing in the harbor? I'm not tracking.
So I brought up two very unique points. So one, I was just applauding GCSD for finally introducing into the public conversation
I understand.
that the current tenant has been provided options, and GCSD has and continues to advocate for that, even until this very moment. In terms of MCC, we want to petition the county who created the document of how those spaces could be used and prioritized. The very first paragraph in that document, correct me if I'm wrong, Nancy, says that as much as possible, it should be preserved as open space, green space. But that document was created prior to GCSD announcing that it was going to become part of parks and then develop this recreation center. So our advocacy around that is to ask the county to just take a deeper look at that, look at the amount of space that would be utilized by GCSD's community and rec center, and then revisit the prioritization list as it exists, because overflow parking for a surfers beach just seems like such a random piece, and there's a lot of kerfuffle around that right now. So
Yeah, I guess what my point is though is, as it relates to the way that this has been defined so far, what has been designed, it fits within the criteria of that document. So we don't need advocacy for I'm just trying to understand.
I didn't mention advocating for the community center.
You did, you said for the park and.
No,
for GCSD.
what I said is that we would like to go to the county and say, now that the park, the community center and recreation center is moving forward, as far as we know, that we would like them to revisit the document that stipulates what other uses can take place on Burnham Strip, completely separate from the GCSD project, and have them re-examine the amount of space that would be utilized as part of the GCSD project, and give more emphasis to the prioritization of open space or green space utilization.
So on the parts of the strip that you mean, on the parts of the strip that are not part of
That's correct.
GCSD's project, gotcha.
Yes, thank you.
Just related actually to that, I'll hold this actually till we talk about the park project, because there's a little bit more. Just one other thought that Kevin brought up that I was going to add to. I think it was the point, Jen, that you just made, that the park project itself is fully in line with all of the El Granada zoning. And the Harbor District parcels are actually within the existing El Granada zoning. Whether they meet the definition, given their distance from Surfers Beach or parking for Surfers Beach, I think is part of their process that we need to go through.
And we understand that.
Yeah. Thanks, Kevin.
All right, any other comments from the community? All right, let's move on then to presentation by Hillside Alex. Sorry. Oh, no, wait, sorry, one update for the staff, sorry.
I'll do just a quick brief and then.
Okay.
So just, just sort of a follow-up where we are at this point. Since last month, we were waiting on that letter. We had the pre-application workshop, public workshop, and then the county just got the letter out, which I believe all of you were copied on. The letter just came out last week. So we're gonna have a chance to get some questions answered on that. I did want to just bring up one quick thing related sort of to our park and the parking issues, as well as Harbor District and so forth. There's going to be a meeting on October 27th at Supervisor Ray Mueller's office that's being sort of hosted, sponsored by Ray Mueller and Senator Josh Becker, with Caltrans and the Harbor District to address community parking concerns. I'm planning on attending just so I can make sure that GCSD is, represented if it needs to be. But just to make you guys aware that that is happening and that, you know, those conversations are continuing to happen between the Harbor District and us and Caltrans and so forth.
Is it an open meeting or?
It is an open meeting. It's October 27th and it starts at 12 or 12:30. I'm not entirely sure.
12:30, he said at
12:30.
MCC.
Okay, good. Thank you.
But that was my other post-it. It's 12, they have, it's 12:30 to 2 in his office, and Zoom will be available. And he couldn't get one in the evening. He was very apologetic. But when he talked about it at MCC, he talked about himself and Josh Becker and Caltrans. I don't remember him mentioning Harbor District, and I kept thinking, how can they have a meeting about the parking lots without the Harbor District? So I'm glad you clarified for me that it's Harbor District and Caltrans.
Is that the Redwood City location? Or the?
No,
Princeton?
he's got, he's got a
Princeton.
job in Princeton.
All right,
All right, and then.
any other comments from the board since we just started board comments?
No, so
I'll check
we've got
this.
non-con right here to talk a little bit more. I was laughing because, you know, Hope said we had a meeting that you were all at
Yes.
September 25th. And I was gonna say we were eagerly awaiting the letter from the county with the list of conditions, but I think the eagerness went away
Saw the letter.
when we actually read that. So
Great.
I think most of you have read through it. It seems pretty onerous, but this is part of the process, you know. Tom made an allusion to this when we had our meeting earlier this week, is they ask for a lot of stuff, and this is when the negotiations begin. So what happens with this stuff, it opens the door for us to start a dialogue with the Coastal Commission, with Coastal County Water District, with the county themselves and all of this. We have people we can talk to, we have a comments letter that we can address, and again, it's part of the process. So we're not gonna go into detail tonight, because we just got the letter last week. So we've already reached out to Coastal Commission for a meeting. We're gonna be reaching out to the other parties to start the discussions here. So when we just wanted to keep you up to speed, and then come November meeting, we can give you a more detailed update. We can talk about the letter then.
Okay.
Tom?
I have a question about the letter.
Sure.
I read it and if I understood that the county is accepting public comment until November. But I looked for a link to make comments. I couldn't
Well-
find it.
Well, what's interesting about this is a pre-application letter. So now they make comments almost like it was the application ours was in. So I think they'll be accepting, and Tom can speak to this better than I can. The application process would certainly have a comments period for that.
I think it's,
That's separate from the letter.
Yeah, we have more to come.
I think they said at the workshop that if you go to the planning department's webpage, our project is one of the ones featured on their webpage, and you can click through that link to do comments.
I clicked that link. I didn't see
And
any.
no comments, okay.
Well, the pre-application period is closed. There is no ongoing public comment period through the county. The summary letter between Nancy, Chuck, and Hope, it's like I got to edit on the fly because you guys hit half of what I was planning on saying here. So the letter that was sent out, was issued to everybody who wanted to be involved. The letter's on the county's webpage for the project right now. And I expect that many people who received the letter, possibly including some of you, honed in on one or two of the comments in like either absolute celebration or total dismay. And let me be clear, the most important paragraph in this letter is the very bottom one on the first page, and I want to go over and read it in its entirety. The purpose of this letter is to summarize the comments received during the public workshop and provide comments received from county departments and other reviewing agencies. They go on to underline, this letter is for informational purposes only. It shall not confer or imply any approval or rejection of the project by the county of San Mateo. This letter is not a checklist. We'll get that after we apply. This letter is really like the opening salvo in an ongoing set of negotiations and compromises that's going to happen and take a lot of our time over the next 6 to 9 months. There's not a lot of benefit to you or to the public in general at this point of delving into the details on each and every page. But that said, there are a handful of related comments in there that I do want to acknowledge with you because they have driven much of the functional discussion of the park, and will continue to do so during the permit process. While we've always referred to this next step as the coastal development permit process, equally as important is the use permit that we need to obtain, even though we haven't talked about it as much. And as Nancy mentioned, the parcels that the park and the community center sit on and the adjacent parcels are part of that El Granada Gateway zoning district. And in the zoning description, Nancy mentioned some of these, there are only a handful of very specific allowable uses. Fortunately, all of them relate to parks or public events. Even though the only allowable uses for the parcel are those, the permission to develop in those directions is done at the discretion of the planning commission through the issuance of the use permit. And this is different than, say, in like a residential zone, where single family residential is allowed by right. You don't need a use permit for that. But the zoning code provides that if you wanted to build a fire station, say, that would be allowable with a use permit. In the El Granada Gateway zoning district, all of these uses are allowed, but only with the use permit. And because it's discretionary, it allows the county to engage at a higher level on the project to ensure that the use is, and the project is developed really in the public interest. And considering its location, that really makes a lot of sense for this district. Going back a little ways, when the district staff and the design team and the consultants were developing the formal project description, which is what really drove the development of the following environmental documents, some of you may recall that there were several revisions made along the way to the language that were intended to expand potential opportunities for public events and community events, both within the park as well as within the community recreation center. And so when the county staff and the planning commission are reviewing this application for this use permit, they're going to be focusing on and potentially requiring mitigation for any impacts that these proposed uses may have on the community. They'll be looking at ensuring that there's no adverse impacts on the environment from these uses, as well as that the proposed uses won't be taxing on utilities or environmental services. And some of these are part of the environmental documents, but some of them come in specifically with findings that the planning commission needs to make for the use permit specifically. But the primary issue here through this use permit and by the capacity and demands and frequency of events really comes down to parking. And I'll get to the parking in just a second, but I want to reinforce this use permit issue, because my recommendation for the district, for the board and for staff is that you need to start giving some really serious and specific consideration for your vision as to the overall use of these facilities. We developed this project description that's really, really broad, but to implement that, we need to be able to, on the plan or in the series of rules and regulations that go into this use permit, be able to substantiate those decisions and that use of the site. I think some of the county's concerns can probably be addressed by more clearly defining what community events are It's pretty vague. Do we mean a history walk? A local history walk that may start at a trailhead at the park and then zigzag through town? Or is it a yoga class on the village green with 12 people? Or is the district wanting to compete with the Pumpkin Festival and plan a 200-person weekend-long event? The approved use permit is going to be a document that effectively locks in the parameters for the use on the site. And the district needs to propose and develop the specifics for that. So hours of operation, frequency of classes, public classes versus potential private event uses. This document then becomes a resource for the county to use if in the future, after 4 consecutive weekends of loud amplified rock concerts on the strip, the county can say, hey, you know, you're affecting traffic, you're affecting parking and beach access and emergency services and health and welfare of residents. And we all know that this is not the district's intent, but the county does not. And there's no document or series of documents that substantiate that. But as I said, even though there's the use permit issue, this is really coming back to the parking issue. And we all know this is super challenging. It was made way more complicated by Caltrans proposal that came to light last year. And it has since been made dramatically more contentious with the public response to the Harbor District's proposed parking lots on the far end of the strip. It's relatively trivial for us to point to the plans and substantiate that we are providing sufficient parking for the proposed uses of the community center and the park. But the county and coastal, maybe even more importantly, coastal, are clearly looking to this project to set some baseline parameters for parking, as well as to help identify solutions for the complicated issues here. And I don't think I'm out of line maintaining that the district does not feel that they should be obligated to solve the regional parking issues for adjacent municipalities and agencies and do so entirely on their own property. But as Coastal's letter makes clear, we do need to address and continue to engage on this issue. As Chuck said, we have been in contact with Coastal staff and we are scheduling a meeting to discuss some of the conflicting code language between the Coastal Act and the local coastal program, especially as those are applied to the current dirt law. And we expect to be able to propose some solutions at your November meeting. There's much more in the letter that we can get into, but again, diving into the weeds isn't really appropriate at this point. Both county and coastal had comments regarding the potential sensitive habitat areas, and in response, we've been looking at potential refinements to certain areas, as well as updating some of the studies that went into the environmental documents. And like with the parking, we expect to be able to show you some of those potential solutions in November. We've had many meetings together over the last 8 years, and one of Director Marsh's previous comments has a lot of relevance here. Nancy, at one point you described the park plans as aspirational, right? A wish list, kind of outlining the board's vision for what this project could be. And through our negotiations with the county, they will help refine the project into what it can be, and then the budget will describe what it will be. The county's letter, and this would drive staff nuts if they heard me say this, but it's likewise aspirational. It's only through these next 6 to 9 months of ongoing negotiation and engagement with you, with them, with regulatory and partner agencies and with the public that we will continue to refine or frankly to justify the park plans to ensure that we're developing a project that really serves the needs of the district's residents. So if you have any questions, I'm happy to address them, but at this point, I'd kind of like to stay at the 10,000 foot level.
Well, I think it's really helpful. Thank you for taking the time to go through all this. I do have one quick question, just to clarify. I understand this is like, it's an iterative process over the next 6 to 9 months with Lassen County. But it also sounded like you're saying sort of there is some pre-work that we could do around use, like how we're defining use. And I was wondering, do you have any examples of how like staff could actually start to build some sandbox around that for us that we could start seeing to say like, what do we want to use this space for? How should we be thinking about it just to get ahead of that at all?
I think we can provide staff some context for how to start thinking about that. Some of these are going to be very specific. The hours of operation on the building. Some of them are going to be legal, maximum capacity of the buildings based on square footage and what the legal capacity of those things are. All of that is going to need to be specifically listed. But there's the level of activity, the frequency of activities is a policy decision that I think I would encourage you to start as a board to start thinking of on your own. And we can work with staff to help at a future meeting, you hone in on what that policy is going to look like. And that will end up getting folded into the application.
Yeah, I guess that's what I'm saying, right? It's like there are givens or there are things that are obvious that we can copy paste per se, but understanding what are the things that our policies we need to contemplate, I think it'd be helpful to know. I don't think.
So you're looking for a framework, if you
Yes,
will,
some sort
for
of framework
discussion
for
of,
discussion, yes.
here's this piece of it, here's this piece.
Right, so like
So we'll do that,
Yeah,
yeah.
great,
Yeah.
okay.
It's really looking at events and usage. I mean, having classes or programs that start at the park, like I described, that's not a big deal. County is worried that when the project description says we're going to have community events with frequency that may be 2 or 3 times a month, they don't know what that is.
Right.
And so the board is going to need to tell them what that.
Yeah, and we'll provide that
Is-
because you guys are making the policy decisions and you need a framework for
Yes.
discussion if you go for it.
So is that for just the park and the community center or one or the other or?
It's for both.
combo?
It's for both.
Okay.
And you may have seen in the letter that there was a lot of discussion about, especially specifically from county right up front about frequency of events and capacity of events. They don't necessarily go out and say it, but that's because of parking
And traffic.
and traffic. Yeah. And so if, for instance, the district wanted to propose community events that may include 200 people, we need to be able to show through this documented through the plans that the project is suitable to handle something like that.
Just thinking of an example that just came to mind, the Easter egg program that we've been doing at Quarry Park, which attracted about 50 people. So things like that we can imagine would happen there. We have to start imagining
Yep.
those things that could happen there and how often they would be and what kind of capacity. I think, how do we manage the capacity once you are out in the middle of the park? But I read that they're trying to figure out how much traffic and how much parking and are you going to clog the neighborhood? I thought of 2 potential resources really for the team. One kind of in that regard is just after I joined the board, and left the Parks Advisory Committee. Pat Tierney was still chairing the Parks Advisory Committee, and he invited Eddie Bealey from Ted Adcock and Mike Davis from Pacifica Rec Center, and had about a 90-minute just good discussion with them about how do you use the rec center. And it was when we were starting the design process for the rec center. How do people use it? How often do you use it? What kind of events do you have? What kind of demand is there for those? And I wish I could find that document because I've been looking for it, but I can reach out to Pat. Pat made the notes from that, but that might be useful just as kind of a starter for 10, that benchmarking that we did 5 years ago to see how in our kind of local zone, how people use those sorts of resources. The other one may be useful for that meeting on the 27th to have in your pocket, and about parking. In the 2019 survey, we specifically asked for the neighborhood's view on do we want more parking, less parking, no parking, and so on. And the questions were structured. This is top of mind because I've defended it a lot lately, but I also gave it to Jim Pruitt, who reached out, I think it's almost a year ago, before the Harbor District made public their proposal. He reached out to several agencies, and I was still president at the time, so I responded, but gave him sort of this color. Those questions were structured so you could get a net positive or net negative. The only net positive was about the same amount of parking. And the sentiment behind that, when you go through the comments, was we're okay with the traffic we have now, but we don't want any more. And if you put in more parking, that will just bring more people into the neighborhood and clogging the streets in the neighborhood. So, keep the status quo. Everything else was unpopular. The least unpopular, interestingly, was less parking. I think it was negative 30 points. More parking was negative 55 points. And so I think that's important information from the community for the county to hear. I thought of it when looking at, do they want to make our end of the strip a parking lot for Surfers Beach? Our neighborhood would say no more than what we already have. And so we have that color. I think we should keep that voice of the neighborhood in front of people who are making those decisions.
What's also going to be helpful, and we do have this on the plan, but it would be to emphasize the non-vehicular access and opportunities to get to either the park or the community recreation center. So, for instance, the upgraded crosswalks with the push button flashing beacon. The additional bike parking, both short-term and long-term, really highlighting those because those are taking cars out of the equation.
And that's actually something, with the Easter egg hunt, for example, I would say at least 50 to 60% of the people coming to that are walking or biking. And so it's hard to account for, what certain events are going to cause as far as parking needs or traffic needs when actually most people are just coming in from their homes on their bikes.
Ultimately, what we would end up with for the county, is it more, I understand what we have today is like too loose, but is it illustrative or is it exact, right? Are they looking for an exact list of the exact things that we will have there? Or is it more, this is representative of the types of things and the type of footprint we're talking about and the hours?
Yeah, it's not a schedule.
Right.
that
No, I know
we
it's
need
not a
to provide.
schedule, but I mean, is it a menu per se, right?
It may be right now, for instance, the project description says community events that may occur 2 to 3 times a month, and that's it. So giving them more specifics on what the size of those events are, giving some more consideration to the actual frequency of those, but those going to occur in the summer or the winter. What are those events, or how are those events targeted? How are those events publicized? Encouraging that these are really local, close community events, not coastside or San Mateo County community events.
I'd be curious to see what Ted caught it in their application.
Well, a lot of this is a dialogue with the county, right? You sit down with them.
No, I understand, but having gone through a permitting process and myself and knowing that ultimately you do land on something, right? You're agreeing
Yeah.
on something, so I'd just be curious to see how they, even if it's not physically what you have on paper, like how did they handle this and what were some of the learnings, like maybe they could someone could come to a meeting and share with us some of their journey through this portion of it, just to.
Yeah, I think Adcoc's a little different. They don't, because Adcoc's in the city of Half Moon Bay and the city of Half Moon Bay.
It's not-
I believe in the public service zoning district, community centers are allowable by right.
Mm.
So they don't need to grant themselves a use permit. There's no negotiation with the county
Oh,
in this. So it's a different zoning code that's driving.
that's interesting.
So maybe why we don't have any public space in that.
You love the county, Nancy. Yes, you love working with the county.
I had a thought about the encouraging non-car access. I think it makes sense for park and rec center. But for the areas that are designed for beach access, I think a visit to the beach requires more luggage and equipment than most people could put on a bicycle or walk with. So just keep that in mind.
Yeah.
If it's designated as beach, allow for car parking.
Well, and that's the county and
Right.
one of county and coastal's primary concerns right there.
We keep coming back to, we knew this 6 months ago, you're parking.
Yeah.
Well, it actually had gone fairly quiet until Caltrans plan came in. Those 75 extra cars have to go somewhere, and there really is concern that, as somebody noted at the public workshop, the area around Coronado is some of the densest housing. It's where the apartment buildings and condos and townhouses are in El Granada. So you have the densest housing, the need for street parking and pushing parking up. I'd just like to add us to keep advocating for those neighbors. They don't want it on their neighborhood streets. We don't want, you can't fit actually into our park. We can't accommodate 75 more spaces, even if we did nothing to the dirt lot, right? On a busy day. I go by, I count them now every time I drive by the parking lot. It's generally like 10 to 15, but a very, very busy day. The Len Erickson found on Google Earth, it had 50. And
All right, any other comments from the board? Any other comments from the community? Thank you very much.
thanks.
Thank you always. All right. Moving on now to our next topic, which is the, oh my gosh, I just lost it, where to go? Presentation by co-site allies regarding El Granada holiday event. Right.
So thank you, everybody, for having me back to kind of formally present some of the parameters of this. As it was mentioned at the last meeting, I guess I should say I'm speaking on behalf of co-site allies and not the MCC at this point. We are looking for a partnership with GCSD to produce a series of events. A series of events that can be staggered or it could be continuous. Basically, I emailed Hope the approval from the Harbor District to use the space. I also included an email from the Chamber of Commerce, and Crystalline is going to do an in-kind donation, underwrite, do all the insurance, and make sure that everything that happens on that space is covered. Anything that happens outside of that space on the street would have to be vendor specific. So there's a restaurant there that might be able to do a food truck. There's some interest in having like a shopping vendor day where like local artisans can come and table, whether that happens within the space or not. That would be up to the planning body. So I tried not to put a pin in too many specific ideas, because the idea is that we would come together as a planning body and develop those together and stay mindful of the cultural relevancy and make sure that within that we are being as inclusive as possible, and also creating a lot of potential fun memories for the community. That being said, Michelle Dragoni is here on Zoom, and I am very happy to announce that Coastside Buzz has announced that they would also match our $1,500 contribution, and would come in and produce and potentially reach out to Eric at Spangler's and see if they would like to also match that donation. The idea is that if we get to about $10,000, when I looked at the rough costs for like a large tree, lighting, table stations, AV equipment to, if we were to say, if we were going to show Elf and have people come and watch it, that would put us in a very good position to, as a planning body, then reach out to very specific vendors to do other things, whether that's caroling, which I know Barbara squealed about caroling, but my Jewish aunt was on the phone with me. She's like, you can't say Jesus, you can't say Christmas. She's like, so make sure that you're going through the list carefully with your planning body. So we're really looking forward to that type of conversation with the planning group when we get there. In terms of the types of events, I think that we could start, according to Jim, the day after. What do they call their event? The harbor, the lights in the harbor? Okay, the boat lady. So we could start technically the day after, but we don't have to start the day after. I think the idea of doing 10 days of events is very daunting. Since it's its first run, it's a dry run, we would kind of want to see what worked and what didn't work. But I do think that, when we get into the weeds, we can kind of define that better and figure out if there are events that can be kind of autonomous and kind of just focus around the tree itself, and where, people can come and have picture taken, do things like that that are separate from very structured, vendor engaged planned type of events. The ask for today is that Coastside Allies and GCSD enter into an agreement, and that a motion be made to formalize that agreement. The details are obviously to be determined in terms of specifics of what the actual events look like, the times, who's staffing what, that kind of stuff. But Coastside Allies is definitely willing to contribute $1,500. We would like to ask, as part of the motion, that you match that, and that as we enter into this kind of motion and hopefully approval, that if we are bringing on additional producers, that they also would come in and match that amount, so that we would have more capital to provide the events for the community instead of having to do a lot of fundraising within the community. So formally, I'd like to request that the GCSD consider entering into a partnership with Coastside Allies and other producers willing to match the fund of $1,500 to produce a series of events to be determined on the days, times, etc., through the planning body. I did speak with Hope. I do think it would be smart to have somebody from staff as well as a member of the board on the planning body, just in case there are questions that Hope can answer that somebody else might not know the specifics of. And with that, I will leave it to your process. And thank you very much for entertaining this. I think everybody that I've talked to is just so stupidly excited about this. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any comments, questions from the board?
My mind tends to go to the complications. I think it is a lovely thing to do, and sort of brings the neighborhood together. I think that was a sentiment the last time. A friend of mine owns Ocean Ciders, the cider bar, and she first was looking at that lot And the Harbor District was super supportive, leased the space to her. The process of getting a use permit was a year long, cost her lots of money, and she ended up going to a different Harbor District spot because of that. And similar to the letter that we got on the park, there was a long wish list of all the improvements they'd like to have seen made to that corner that they were laying on her. These are more questions really for
I have
the
it.
planning team, is whether you need a use permit and is it feasible? Do you need porta potties? And is there a way to keep those secure? And lighting, we just have, a lot of the neighbors are sensitive about lighting.
So I will try to answer them in the sequence that you asked them. So in terms of the additional permit, I actually put it in my notes that an additional permit will need to be obtained. However, Crystalline has assured me that she's gone through this process with the Harbor District. The Harbor District has already sent in an email to their staff advising that they are for this, they want it to happen, and to please make that process as easy as possible, and to make sure that through that process that all fees would be waived. So I don't know what the exact circumstances were with your friend, but this would be a donation of the space with no fees being collected by the Harbor District, which may have some bearing on the ease or
It sounds temporary versus a lease.
Yeah. versus-
I mean, it was- The permit was not with the Harbor District, with the county, and it may be because it was a business.
Yeah.
So I'm just tossing out.
Yeah, I mean, Jim did actually bring that up, and so Crystalline did sidebar me and mention that she knows that process, and based on the context of this use, thinks that it might
Just transient use.
just be a much easier process. Porta potties, yes. So there are kind of administrative things that we would have to think about as a body. So, who's there to turn off the lights? Who's there to make sure the locks are on the porta potties? Who's on there to ensure that all, big bright lights are turned off at 9 or 10 PM, whatever arrangement we, come to that seems fair and respectful of the dark skies ordinance that people are, very open and embracing in this current moment. So I think all of that would kind of, flesh itself out. But we have definitely started thinking about it already. I just didn't want to get too far ahead of myself because I wanted to make sure that I was valuing my contribution as part of the planning body.
One last thought, if it all starts to become too complicated, just as a contingency plan, we have had just fabulous luck working with county parks to do things in Quarry Park, where they waive permit fees, the rangers help. And so if you needed to pivot, just for the back of your mind, that might be a.
Well, I think that would be something that you guys are bringing to the planning body, and that is a great thing to know, because I think all best intentions aside,
You're learning.
sometimes you have to pivot. So that's very sage advice.
But the idea of having a tree on that corner is really cool.
It's really cool.
It is very cool. And I know I've talked to some local artisans, fine art, jewelry makers that would love to do like a vending day and do tables. And then I talked to an organization that works with school kids and talking about cookie decorating and each kid doing, 24 and maybe having spanglers come up and set up like an eggnog bar or a cider bar, and a kid can win prizes. And there's so many things that I think that we can do that can, as we said in the very beginning, do this kind of feel good community embracing type of event. And I'm really looking forward to all of the wisdom that you guys have and past iterations of doing things. I know that you guys do a lot of events and you guys host a lot of different things. So, COSIDE allies would definitely lean on you for guidance around that.
Any other point?
I have a question.
Sure.
Are you asking us to partner for one event, see how it goes, and then talk about future ones, or to agree to 10 events?
So how many of our events we decide as a planning body would be the event?
The season, basically.
Yes, exactly. So I think there's technically, I think theirs is on the 14th. So the 15th to the 25th is technically 10 days. I don't have it in me to do 10 days of events. I'm working part-time now, and just the idea of that seems a little bit unreasonable, but I do think that we could figure out, even if we take days and have breaks in between those days, and maybe, infuse part of the historic walks that you do with the tree lighting, and talk about, however, but you want to work that in, could be a fun thing to do. I think that there were some concerns about trying to put in too much and then having community exhaustion with events. So we don't want to do that. We also have to be responsible about time. During the week, it's really difficult. It just so happens that usually the week of Christmas, most people are working from home or off. So we might have better luck around that kind of tail end. And we could possibly also do like a New Year's Eve kind of thing, something that I interjected in our meeting and was very, well received. I mean, I think that would be an amazing thing to do for the adults, even just, a champagne toast and something on New Year's Eve. Yeah. Our own.
Yeah, no.
So it's kind of flock.
9:01.
9:01.
Any
Any
other
other
questions from the
questions?
board? Okay, any questions on community, or Barbara, do you have anything you want to say?
Yes, and I guess I have to turn on my camera. Sorry for the way I look. Legally, there we go. I would be happy to work as the liaison on this. I have decades of permitting experience of how to write things so that it comes out the way you want it.
Amazing.
Great. I was thinking of you.
All
Particularly
right.
since you squealed over the caroling.
Yeah, I want to make it clear it would be non-denominational caroling, which is what I would support. There are so many holiday songs.
Experience with that.
Okay, just before I put it up for motion, any other community members? Does someone want to put forward a motion for partnership and matching?
I first ask staff, any comments, concerns?
No,
Unless Bill raises his hand, I think, we've done this with partnering with the school kids and so.
And I do want to say that I was trying to be very respectful and mindful of your process, and I did meet with Hope separately to kind of talk about all of this prior to the meeting. Sure.
yeah, I have I think it's super exciting. Nora thinks it's super exciting, like
Right.
she and I both.
I just didn't want to foist it on.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
Well, I move that we co-sponsor for the $1,500 and empower staff to and Director Dye to represent the district in that partnership.
I'll second.
All right,
And you're gonna third?
It's going to.
How exciting.
We need
you
to.
want to call for a vote?
Okay, I'll do a roll call. Director Dot,
Yes.
Director Allen,
Yes.
Director Bowles.
Yes.
Director Randall.
Yes.
Director Marsh.
Yes.
Okay, motion passes 5-0.
Thanks.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
I need to run.
Thank you.
So very much.
Thank you.
All
All right, let's move on to engineers report.
Oh. As usual, our engineer is probably in Italy or Hawaii, living the good life. We've been going back and forth with the sewer main replacement project, so Hope's been coordinating with this, I recall XL at Kennedy Jenks Engineers. And we've done some CCTVing of the lines. We're finding out some interesting stuff. Some lines we thought were still from the 1920s. Look to preliminarily be maybe replaced in the 50s and 60s.
Oh,
So, and I can't remember if
Is there
John
not
or
there?
XL had a good idea to do just exploratory 20-foot in. So you can see if it's terracotta pipe or vitrified clay pipe and things like that. So we're still working out the process of exactly which ones will need to be replaced.
so the 1908 pipes are the terracotta pipes.
Terracotta, yes, yeah.
It's amazing they're not crushed or.
I had an old engineer tell me this, at the end of the day, it's clay. and it's hardened, and what's in the ground? Clay. So
Right.
it's inert, it's part of the earth,
Yeah.
right? So.
When they replaced terracotta, the last round, Director Dye saved a chunk of it for our history display. at the end of the lobby.
Just curious, is there any insight as to what's happening with Big Wave? Because it's the same exact report from last month as this month.
They'll go like 2 years, Jen,
Okay,
of silence.
Okay.
And then something will pop up,
Okay.
and that's kind of their modus operandi. So the last thing we had was, I think we reported we plugged the line,
yeah,
and we haven't heard a peep from them, and that's been going on for 15 years.
I mean, and they
Okay.
can't, they can't connect to the system until we.
right, no, I understand, but I mean, I feel like they're getting close, like 15
Yeah.
years, there was no building, and then the
Right.
last like year, there's like a massive facility.
Yeah, but it's fits and spurts.
Yeah.
When they did their EIR for the project, we found out about it the day before they released it. So, yeah, so it's, like I said, it's nothing.
But I can check in with them
Yeah.
and just sort of get a feel for where they are, what they're expecting, when they're expecting for things to be done. Because all of a sudden the building is looking a lot more done.
Yeah.
So, and I talked to somebody just last week whose daughter's gonna be moving in there, and it's not that far off.
Yes.
Okay.
It's an impressive space.
Yeah.
It's. All right, Sam report, is that you?
I can do that.
Sure.
I'm ready. We've only actually had 2 meetings since the last GCSD meeting. The one regular meeting, we authorized a contract to install boiler number 2 that we approved acquisition of in I think February. So it was not a big meeting. And then we did have a special meeting on the 1st of October, which was primarily to have a closed session with the council about potential litigation. But we did have a public comment session where we had several of the homeowners from Seal Cove who came basically just to continue to ask for help. The short background story is that they are homeowners whose laterals are private and have grinder pumps that are difficult to replace. For many years, apparently NWSD fixed the grinder pumps for them, even though they are owned by the homeowners. And starting last spring, notified the homeowners they will no longer do that. Well, MWSD didn't actually do the fixes. SAM did, because they are the collections and maintenance contractor. And so I just want to note that every one of the homeowners who came, and there were 4 or 5, were extremely complimentary of the SAM collections team. Even when they told them that they couldn't work on it because it's private and Montera didn't give them the clearance, they were very polite about it. They were as helpful as they could be, and same for the GM when they contacted the GM. So we're happy to see that SAM is doing what they can, but they can only do what Montera asked them to do.
And do you want to give an update on your diggings into finance, or? say-
Can I just toss in something?
Go ahead, Barbara.
I just wanted to say that excellent report. That's true, and that it's clear that at I think it was in June, Montera officially notified the collection team that they were no longer to do any work on those facilities. So it's not just like all of a sudden they stopped. No, they officially notified SAM and said, you may know. So when people come to SAM, Sam says, we have been, told that we may not work on these. And I think that's an important part to make clear. Thanks.
Right, they're privately owned, and Seal Cove is having some other issues anyway. But there are a regular plumber. If I don't have a grinder pump on my lateral, if it was flawed, the regular plumber could snake it.
Plumber.
I nearly got both those words out. A regular plumber could snake. These have grinder pumps in them, and so it's more complex, and you need somebody who can bring a vacuum truck to vacuum it out because they're in a wet well, and so they need to find the right vendor. Montera on their website gives them information about what to ask for and kind of what to look for in a vendor, but won't recommend vendors. But there is some word of mouth going on between the folks who have this issue. If somebody finds somebody who can do it, they share the information.
But I guess let me just, what's driving the change? Like if so many years they were doing it, now they're not, like what made them no longer, you know?
I can't speak.
I'd probably say liability, but I always wondered
Why they
why
were
they
doing
did it in the
Yeah,
first place, because you don't see a lot of public agencies going on private property.
yeah,
Yeah, they set a precedent, but
yeah. Interesting.
I'll mention the finance. We're having conversations, and I just had this conversation on email with Kishan today. One of the things that we have noted is that when we do the budget with Sam, there's an infrastructure budget that lists all the projects that they're requesting funding for. And last year and this year was simply Montero Force Main, $3 million. There have been sometimes much longer lists. Since 2020, it's sort of a rolling list. They don't always get done in the year that they're proposed. And frequently, by the time they do get done, they cost a lot more. An average of 37% more than what was originally budgeted. So they are still working on finishing some things that were budgeted in 2021 and 2022. And the sum total of those things is they are about $2 million over what the original projections were. When we do a budget with Sam, then the next 12 months, we pay them the same amount every month to fund what was on the list. It's clear they don't have in reserves. I think it was 2.3 million left over from last year. The agencies paid $3 million toward the Montero Force Main. They spent about 700,000 in total in that fiscal year on the Force Main. And the 2.3 million is not sitting in their bank. It paid for the old projects coming through, the projects coming through after budget. But the one thing that we discovered, and I sat for about an hour and a half with the CFO and Kishan, is anything that they can capitalize over $5,000 that's capital they can capitalize comes out of that infrastructure budget. A lot of that is incidental maintenance things, equipment and repair. We talked last month about the electrical board that they had to replace, the diffusers from the outfall they had to replace. All those sorts of things can be capitalized. And so they are taking them out of the infrastructure budget, but they don't have all those incidental things, which can add up to a lot. It can add up to $500,000 to $1 million. And I can think a plant this size. I'm looking at Chuck because you gave me a guess, and I think that's where I heard that. But it can add up to a lot, and it's not budgeted anywhere. It just comes out of the project's budget. So what we have discussed is that for next year's budget, we will do a specific and separate budget for the incidental projects that are not specifically identified, so that we can now track in a much more realistic way the projects we believe we have funded, what is their status versus using those funds, and the operations committee is focusing more on, and what is when we decide to do it, what is the project plan, what is the timeline for that project, so that we're not starting something 2 years after we estimated it and provided the money for it. So there's financial cleanup to do. There's the Montero Force Main, I think when it was spread out over the 5-year CIP, could be about 10 million.
10 to 12.
We're going to end up paying more than that because of this backlog of projects that cost more.
Well, and that gets to the crux of the issue is there's we've always had trouble with Sam sometimes in their transparency, and their Nancy and Barbara as well, much earlier, have been working hard to improve that transparency. But the real issue is, your board approved a budget that Sam presented to us that said the 3 agencies will spend $3 million on this Montero Force Main project, and they only spent 700, and then the other 2.3 went to other projects.
Yeah.
It's not what your board approved, and we'll talk about it in more detail probably at the November meeting. I'll work with Nancy and Hope and Barbara and Kishan and George to get an accounting of where that money went, and then present it to your board and say, here's what's happening, and Bill will weigh in as well. So yeah, because it's $3 million that we thought was going to a $12 million project, and now there's 2.3, and they say they're on budget for this year for the O&M, but you've spent another 2.3, so It's a broader issue.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so well, I give credit to Barbara, bless her, on the finance committee for several years. It literally has done spreadsheets herself to try to track down exactly what we're tracking, and I think it's because of Barbara, we now have a monthly capital improvement project report that shows the projects that are in process and how much has been spent on them, how much yet to be spent.
That's great.
If they need more, if they're overspent, it shows if they decided not to do it, which happens sometimes. That's also on the comments. But what really brought the shortfall to light is Barbara asked them to separate out the projects that are done from those budget years from the projects that are still in progress. And that dropped all the ones that are done to the bottom and made very clear that they are, I think it's 1.8 or 1.9 million overspent, and they're done and the money is spent. But it's kind of a rolling thing every year that they do. That basically it's coming out of next year to pay.
And it shouldn't be this much work.
Yeah.
Figure this stuff out.
And it predates Kishin. I think George has been there almost 10 years and this is the way they've always done it. So kudos to Barbara for shining flashlights on it.
So we'll have more in November.
Yeah.
All right,
Yeah, I'm working with them.
sounds good. Thank you.
Can I just add one thing? When we're referring to projects, we're talking about projects with a small p.
Yes.
Not a project budget. We're talking about those items that were funded as part of a general budget. I just wanted to make that clear for the record. I just couldn't help it. Sorry. And I agree with what Chuck said, and looking at this, one of the things that I think should be made clear going forward too is, when there are complaints about how much is being spent on IPS or whatever, just looking at the budgets, if that's been sans practice, is not the appropriate way to look at it. The way to look at it is how much has actually been spent on those projects. So there's some accounting, I think, that is necessary there. And I don't think the JPA supports this notion that it's kind of a slush fund. The general budget is a slush fund. The member agencies are approving a general budget with a particular expectation of what's going to be funded rather than, moving money around. So those are my thoughts. Thanks.
I think when Chuck, when you and Barbara and get together to talk about it, we need really some of the JPA advice. Apparently there's a finance policy. I'm not sure it's reflected in the JPA that gives the general, stated, I think 2004, gives the general manager permission to move money from one account to another as needed to keep the daily operation going. And so we need to say, okay, is the way it's being used consistent with the JPA, or do we need a different?
And Bill and I talked at length about that, and the JPA is the governing document, somewhere between moving $30,000 and 2.3 is the correct thing, because we want Sam to operate, obviously, we don't want to constrain them that much, but so that's what, so we've talked about that, we can talk further about it.
Okay.
And there can always be a budget amendment process to deal with those kinds of issues. There could be some policy that says, like Chuck says, I think there's a huge difference between, $1 million plus and $30,000. And so maybe there's a policy around those amounts to keep the place operational. But then when anything, there's a budget amendment to deal with those questions so that no one is blindsided and expectations are still met.
Well, Kishan did point out to me that there are some on the list that went, like 300% over budget, where he brought them to the board and said, but I have the money, I'm going to take it from the emergency generator because I got that $1 million 2 years ago. We haven't done that project yet. So I'm going to take it from that emergency generator and use it here. And, but the board approved it, right? So as a board, we also have to be kind of paying attention and making sure that we are ensuring that the organization follows the JPA process.
Right. Anything else then? Move on to the consent agenda. I believe we have some changes to the meeting notes for September 2nd.
I had a comment. I'm sorry. I keep clicking the hand and it goes up and then it disappears. So I was trying to do it the right way. I'm sorry.
Yeah, you look like you were raising your hands. I thought you were just agreeing with everything emphatically.
Oh, maybe I was doing the wrong thing. You're right. I just wanted to say a couple things. One is it's been great having Nancy on board. She brings such good experience and rigor and analysis to the project. And so we're patting each other in the back, but I have to say Nancy's been incredible too, and it really helped bring attention to this. And I wanted to just briefly defend George, who came before Kishan. The general manager was Beverly Marshall. And I'm not going to go into the disaster that Beverly Marshall, I'll just say that her budget spreadsheets didn't add up across the lines or, here and there and everything else. Lots of problems. George came on just about the same, a little bit right around the time that Beverly left, and does bring, even though he does bring a lot of good sense and has worked hard to try to improve the accounting. So I don't want to cast aspersions on George because I think he's done a good job. And I do think there's things to be fixed. And I do think there's, especially with Nancy's encouragement, a willingness at Sam, just take a look at these things.
George actually was very forthcoming, answered every one of my questions, shared spreadsheets with me. So I understand what they're doing. We may not agree with what they're doing, but we understand it.
Yeah.
He's not a policy guy. He's but he's a very good nuts and bolts guy. So that's all.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so to the consent agenda, that we have some changes to the notes from the September meeting.
Yes, so there's just the highlighted section was added just to give a little more emphasis to the concerns and reservations that the board were discussing when approached by Supervisor Mueller with regards to the medians. So Director Marsh asked that we add district cost and funding concerns into that list of things that were discussed, just to make sure it's on the record that there are concerns.
Great. Do we have a vote to accept these changes?
You can approve it.
I'm sorry. I have one more comment.
Minutes of amendments.
Okay.
I do think it might, and you don't have to put it in, but it might be important to say that I pointed out that according to GCSD attorneys and local historians, the county owns the medians, which was clearly stated during the meeting and is absolutely true.
Right, it's just the county doesn't.
The
county doesn't agree.
Let me see. what we
No,
have.
no, that's what we did. Yeah.
Right.
So we can just add a sentence that said,
Yep.
because someone, I think Barbara did point it out, because I was about to point it out, that said, we have a letter from our attorneys saying that the county indeed does own it, and we can just add a sentence in these minutes for that.
Great.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
In that case, move to approve the consent agenda with the specific changes to the.
I second.
All right. We do.
Okay, Director Dye,
Aye.
Director Allen,
Aye.
Director Bowles,
Aye.
Director Randall,
Aye.
Director Marsh.
Aye.
Okay. Consent agenda passes 5-0.
I have a question about that. Are we going to have a follow-up conversation with on this topic, and it's been over to staff, right? So
Yeah, and I have reached out to his staff and I'm waiting to hear back from them about who the best contact is
Okay.
at the county. I have not yet.
So
They haven't
we'll wait for a
responded.
vote to come back to us.
Yeah.
Yes.
Go on.
I'm just going to move on to committee reports.
I have sort of a committee report. I was trying to figure out where to put
Where to
this
go
in.
this? Where to put it in?
I reviewed the Mid-Coast Community Council meeting because Supervisor Mueller also talked about his medians project there. And I have a concern, so I wanted to ask the board actually if I could represent the board at the next MCC meeting. There's always a part at the beginning where people from other government agencies can do updates. And I'd like to do an update, just the way that Supervisor Mueller explained the process that he's proposing, the same way he explained it to us. But and so more focus on how the eminent domain process would work, And then I've literally said, and so then county would have the medians and turn them over to GCSD through an MOU, and GCSD agreed to talk to the county about that. And it made it sort of sound like a glide path
Like you
from,
just said,
if
yeah.
you know, do eminent domain, the rest of it is gonna be fine. And I've had people reach out to me saying, oh, is GCSD gonna take them over? But, you know, as per the discussion we had, there's some, you know, serious challenges there. So I would like to go back to the MCC and simply say, what the board agreed to was for our staff to have conversations with, the county professional staff as, Supervisor Mueller, requested, and maybe take that opportunity to explain that we have to explain a lot what an independent special district is and kind of what its constraints are, particularly as regards funding. And so we can't increase our funding. So you know, my concern is that rather than, as Supervisor Mueller said, he likes to look for a solution to a problem rather than just let the problem exist. I think the residents would be great with the county taken by eminent domain, which is basically admitting that they own them, as Director Dye said. But the rest of it is not, you know, simple and straightforward. And so that would be quite a lot for a teeny district with 2 people to take on without any additional funding.
I think I would just ask that, you know, you're clear in communicating the questions that the board has still, right? So like, it's not just, there's more work to do, but I mean, I think we have very clear, like as our notes indicated, right, questions around who's going to maintain it, how would we fund that, like, you know, so that the community understands that it's not just we are working it out, but like we have, you know, 3 real issues.
We're open-minded and
Right.
agreed to have the conversation.
Yeah.
But there are, you know, some challenges for a little special district that actually, you know, the county doesn't have.
Right.
They have a public works department.
Right, which is third issue,
Right.
yeah, like there's no department.
Yeah, I did ask Supervisor Mueller on 1 or 2 occasions if he knows how much the Public Works Department spends every year maintaining the medians. If you ask them to take out a tree, they'll tell you it's your tree, it's your problem. If a tree falls down, they take it out. And so, you know, we see their trucks, we know they're here and they're doing work around and on the medians. And I told him I would have that question, but he didn't come with that answer. So I will still have that question. But I just want to temper, I don't want to put a kibosh on it. We said we'll have the conversation and let's explore it. But I do want the community to know, because there are people who are concerned about us overstretching ourselves and then things falling into disrepair. We had that concern about the park. So I just raised that during
The question I raised was defining the one-time maintenance before they turn it over to the GCSD. What is the budget they're offering?
Yeah,
Well, that part I actually have, based on what, you know, Supervisor Wheeler said, it's literally like they're willing to do what we want, but if the problem isn't the rehabbing, it's the maintenance ongoing of that.
In perpetuity,
In
yes.
perpetuity, right, so I think that if we said we wanted, you know, benches and this and that, they'd be like, great, we'll put it all in there, but then it's like, who's gonna
well,
take care of that?
I think that's where the detail will hit the road, even with the county. Because Supervisor Mueller made the point that the county did not want to take the medians by eminent domain if they had to pay for it.
Right.
Only if the people voluntarily gave it up. So there's not a lot of money being offered. He did say, you know, we can clean up the medians, but in the MOU, this is, I think this is where I'm not a politician because I couldn't just hand it off and say somebody else will make all the answers.
Okay, we're kind of getting on track.
Okay, let me just finish that thought.
We're not,
Oh, anyway,
Yeah.
he said, we'll work it out in the MOU what the condition of the medians is gonna be.
so I think your initial question was to go to.
And I can represent the board.
The board, do we need to vote on that?
No,
Okay,
it's
we
not
just say
on.
yes, it's fine.
Okay.
Anybody have a problem with that? No.
I do not.
All right, so then any other seminars, conferences, or committee meetings to report on? All right, information and calendar, attorneys reports,
No report.
federal management report,
No report?
administrative staff report.
It's in my memo, but I did just want to say I did go on a fog inspection with Sam and Mark Thomas, and Barbara, you would have loved it. But it was really quite fascinating and they do a great job and it's pretty gross.
You say fall.
Fog, fats, oils and grease.
Oh, yes.
So we went out and,
Looked at
did
everything. Oh,
did the core sample to find, see how thick the grease was in the grease trap at Breakwater, which
Yeah.
was in very good shape. They had just had it cleaned recently.
Oh.
Well, we should be getting the reports from Mark Thomas, which is the company that does the fog inspections for us in the next month or so. And so I'll share a summary of those reports. We definitely have some businesses that failed their first inspection and had to be.
The things that Hope is interested in kind of worry me. We still go visit the head works at the treatment plant next out.
I thought you were just like, expecting the fall. Still there.
It's a good thing to remember, the fats, oils and grease. We have the bags here that you can take and you don't want to pour oil down your drain.
Yeah, no. All right, future agenda items, anything of note, anything anyone wants to add? All right, and you will get back to us.
Wait, sorry, I have to unmute. I would like to put on the next agenda for discussion, establishing a community recreation committee.
It's on for November or December. I've got it on the list.
Thank you very much.
All right. So then with that, we will adjourn for closed session. It is 8:41.
We
Okay,
can-
so if Bill and Barbara, you just want to hang on there while we get the clock and